You go to work every single day. You sit in those meetings, you have ideas, you have observations, you have legitimate concerns, and yet you stay silent. Have you ever really truly stopped to ask yourself why? I mean, you tell yourself, oh, it's not the right time, or it's not my place, or maybe someone else will say it. But let's be honest, that's not the real reason. The truth is, your silence has been engineered. It is a product, carefully, deliberately manufactured by the architecture of power that you live in every day.
Just think about that question for a second. Let it really sink in. Why would any system, any company, any organization prefer your quiet compliance over your brilliant contribution? The answer is a brutal psychological truth, a truth about power, status, and control. And it's a truth that most people will live their entire lives without ever understanding.
And that, right there, is why we exist. Welcome to Unspoken Rules. Look, this is not a channel for feel-good stories or corporate platitudes. We are here to dissect the raw, the uncomfortable, and the unspoken dynamics that actually govern our world. So if you're ready to see reality as it is, and not as you're told it is, then you are in exactly the right place.
So let's begin. Let's dive right into our first principle, the unspoken rule of silence. You absolutely must understand that in any hierarchy, silence is never empty. It is not a void. It is a carefully constructed system. It's a language, really, a language that communicates status, enforces control, and determines outcomes long before a single word is ever spoken out loud.
This right here, this is the core duality of it all. For those at the top, silence is a strategic weapon. They use it to create mystery, to project unshakable confidence. It forces everyone else to show their cards first. But for those at the bottom, that exact same silence becomes a cage, a prison built brick by brick with unspoken threats and fear. Today, we're going to deconstruct both.
So, how do they do it? Well, that brings us to the playbook of the powerful, what I call the architecture of asymmetry. Now, this isn't about working harder or being smarter. No. This is about controlling the flow of information and, even more importantly, controlling the flow of justification to maintain your position at the top.
This maxim, this is the cornerstone of high-status behavior. The powerful understand a fundamental law of social dynamics. The moment you start explaining yourself, you are conceding authority. You're basically inviting judgment. Think about it. Your friends, they don't need an explanation for their loyalty. And your enemies, they're just going to twist your words into a weapon to use against you anyway. So, why bother?
You have to get this into your head. When you are pressured into explaining yourself, you are literally handing your power over. You're implicitly saying, you have the right to audit my decisions. Your judgment of me matters. In that instant, you validate your critic. You elevate their status and you lower your own. You've just been pulled from the offensive onto the defensive, forced to react to their frame instead of asserting your own.
And look, this isn't just some clever social tactic. This is rooted deep in our biology. It's called the Dominance Behavioral System, or DBS. It's this ancient neural circuitry we share with other primates that governs our responses to social rank. For a dominant individual, defending against threats to their rank is a biological imperative. The refusal to explain is a subconscious, hardwired strategy to signal confidence and protect one's position in the hierarchy. It's a signal that says, my actions are self-evident. They require zero external validation.
And this table, man, this just breaks it down perfectly. Just look at the contrast. On the one hand, you've got high-status individuals. They rarely justify their actions. Their language, it's concise, it's declarative, it's focused on what is happening. They are primarily information consumers, always asking questions, absorbing data. And their validation, it's internal. Now, on the other side, low-status individuals are in a constant state of justification. Their language is elaborate, it's conditional, it's totally focused on why they did something. They are the information providers, forced to explain and rationalize every move. Their validation, it's external, they're perpetually seeking approval. This is the communication asymmetry, and it is designed to reinforce the power structure at every single turn.
Okay, so we've seen the weapon. Now let's examine the cage. Because for those on the receiving end of this power dynamic, silence isn't really a choice. It's a necessity for survival. We're going to break down the 5 cages of fear that trap the voices of the powerless. And I want you to pay very close attention, because you are almost certainly living in at least one of them right now.
All right, the first and most common cage is defensive silence. This is that primal,
gut-level fear of punishment. You see a problem, right? A flaw in the plan, an unethical corner being cut. You want to speak up, but that little voice in your head whispers, "What's going to happen to me?" So you stay quiet. You do it to avoid being labeled a troublemaker or being passed over for that promotion, or worse, losing your job. This silence feels like a shield, but it only protects you by trapping you in a system that refuses to self-correct.
Next up is Difident Silence. This one is all about the fear of looking foolish. It's driven by a lack of confidence in your own ideas. You think to yourself, maybe it's a stupid question, or everyone else seems to get it. I don't want to be the one who slows things down. This is a submissive silence, and it's born from self-doubt. It's especially powerful in cultures that reward intellectual arrogance and punish anyone who shows a hint of vulnerability.
The third cage is really insidious, relational silence. This is when you withhold the truth to preserve social harmony. You choose not to challenge your boss or correct a colleague because, well, you want to be liked. You value that feeling of interpersonal comfort more than organizational transparency. This choice to avoid tension feels safe in the moment, but over time, it slowly starves the entire organization of the honest feedback it desperately needs to survive.
And this might be the most soul-crushing cage of all, ineffectual silence. This is the silence born from pure resignation. You've tried to speak up before, right? And what happened? Nothing. You've seen other people try and they were ignored or shut down. So you conclude, what's the point? Raising my voice is a futile waste of energy. And so you disengage. This isn't just silence anymore. It's the quiet, bitter acceptance of powerlessness.
And finally, we have the most dangerous form, deviant silence. Now, unlike the others, this is not born of fear. It's born of malice. This is the intentional withholding of critical information as a form of retaliation. You see a train wreck coming, and because you feel mistreated or disrespected by management, you choose to just sit back, fold your arms, and watch it happen. This is weaponized silence from below, and it's a symptom of a deeply broken, untrusting culture.
So what is the key that locks these 5 cages shut? Well, it's the absence of this one single crucial element, psychological safety. This is the absolute bedrock of any high-performing, innovative, or resilient organization. It's the shared belief that it is safe to be vulnerable, that it's safe to ask questions, to admit mistakes, to challenge the status quo. Without it, the cages of fear remain firmly locked, and the entire organization is basically flying blind.
So what happens when you combine these two sides of the equation? When you have unaccountable leaders creating a system of enforced silence, the result is a closed feedback loop, a system that cannot learn, that cannot adapt. And believe me, this isn't some theoretical problem. This dynamic is the blueprint for catastrophe.
What this leads to is a state called epistemic isolation. The leader, insulated by their own power, only hears what they want to hear. Any bad news gets filtered out by subordinates who are terrified of retaliation. Dissent is marginalized. Flattery is rewarded. The leader starts to operate in a completely distorted reality, a perfect echo chamber of their own biases. And in this state, a major strategic failure is no longer just a risk, it is an absolute inevitability.
If you want to see the real-world stakes, you don't have to look any further than the fall of Enron. This wasn't just accounting fraud, it was a catastrophic failure of feedback. First, they built a culture that incentivized misinformation, where everyone got rewarded for pretending the stock price was real. Second, they ruthlessly punished anyone who dared to tell the truth. Dissenters were silenced. Third, leadership weaponized information asymmetry, deliberately hiding fatal risks from investors and their own employees. The final outcome? A complete and total collapse. It was a perfect storm of arrogant, unaccountable leadership and terrified, enforced silence. So, after all of this analysis, the focus has to turn to you. We've dissected this system, we've examined the architecture of power and the cages of fear. Now you have to confront your own position within it. You have to calculate the price of your voice and the true cost of your silence.
Look at these two systems. Just look. On the left is the reality for millions of people. A system of low psychological safety defined by fear, by silence, and by blame. And on the right is the system you deserve, one built on trust, on voice, and on learning. The question you have to ask yourself is, which of these two systems are you choosing to accept every single day you show up?
This is the question you have to answer. For you, will you continue to be a cog in a machine that is explicitly designed to devalue your contribution and to leverage your silence for its own stability? Will you continue to live inside that cage?
Or will you make a different choice?
Will you make a conscious commitment right here, right now, to awareness? To peel back the layers of polite fiction and see the raw mechanics of power for exactly what they are. This is the first and the most critical step toward reclaiming your agency.
If your answer is yes, if you refuse to live in ignorance anymore, then your next actions are clear. This isn't about just watching another video. This is about joining a movement of the aware. So, subscribe to master the unspoken rules that govern your life. Like this explainer to signal your commitment to seeing the truth. Comment below with one example of the cages of silence you have witnessed in your own world. And ring the bell and refuse to live in ignorance for one more day. Make the choice. Commit to awareness. We'll see you on the inside.